Bitcoin mining consumes more electricity every single year than the entire country of Argentina. 121 terawatt-hours annually, powering a digital currency that billions of people have never even touched. That number should stop you cold. Because behind every Bitcoin transaction, behind every block reward, behind every mining rig humming in a warehouse somewhere, there is an enormous and growing energy bill that the planet is being asked to pay. So what does that actually mean for the environment? Is Bitcoin a climate catastrophe waiting to happen, or is the real story far more complicated than the headlines suggest? In the next 10 minutes, you are going to get the full picture. The history of how we got here, the hard data on emissions and energy sources, and the one argument that Bitcoin defenders make that genuinely challenges everything environmentalists have been saying. By the end, you will have a real, informed opinion on one of the most debated topics in the entire crypto space. To understand where Bitcoin mining stands today, you have to go back to where it started. When Satoshi Nakamoto launched the Bitcoin network in January 2009, mining was something you could do on a laptop. A standard consumer CPU was powerful enough to earn block rewards. Energy consumption was essentially negligible. A few thousand computers worldwide were participating, and the carbon footprint of the entire network would not have registered on any meaningful scale. Then Bitcoin grew. As the price increased, more miners entered the network. As more miners entered, the network difficulty adjusted upward, requiring more computational power to earn the same rewards. This is the core mechanic of Bitcoin's proof-of-work system, and it creates an almost automatic escalation in energy demand. By 2013, GPU mining had replaced CPUs. By 2015, purpose-built machines called ASICs dominated the landscape entirely. These are chips designed to do exactly one thing: solve the cryptographic puzzle that Bitcoin requires, as fast as physically possible. The efficiency improved dramatically per computation, but the total scale of mining grew so rapidly that overall energy consumption kept climbing year after year. By 2017, during Bitcoin's first major bull run, researchers and journalists began sounding alarms. The Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance launched the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index, which became the gold standard for tracking the network's energy usage in real time. The numbers were shocking then, and they have only grown since. At peak periods in 2021, the network was consuming over 200 terawatt-hours annually, briefly surpassing countries like Thailand and Malaysia in electricity usage. But here is what nobody talks about when they throw those country comparisons around. The source of that electricity matters enormously. Saying Bitcoin uses as much power as Argentina tells you almost nothing useful unless you also know whether that power is coming from coal plants or hydroelectric dams. And the reality of where miners actually source their energy is one of the most genuinely surprising aspects of this entire debate. According to the Bitcoin Mining Council, which surveys a significant portion of the global mining industry, approximately 59% of the energy used in Bitcoin mining comes from sustainable sources. Now, that number is self-reported and disputed by some researchers, who put the sustainable figure closer to 25 to 30%. Even at the lower estimate, Bitcoin mining sources a higher percentage of renewable energy than almost any other major industry on Earth. Why? Because miners are economically incentivized to find the cheapest electricity possible, and in many regions of the world, the cheapest electricity is surplus renewable energy that would otherwise go to waste. This is where the story gets genuinely interesting. In regions like Sichuan, China, before the mining ban in 2021, massive hydroelectric dams generated far more electricity during the rainy season than local grids could absorb. Bitcoin miners moved in specifically to consume that surplus. In Iceland, geothermal energy is so abundant and inexpensive that it attracted mining operations from across Europe. In Texas, wind farms sometimes produce so much electricity overnight that grid prices go negative, and miners absorb that overflow, actually stabilizing the grid rather than straining it. This concept is called demand response, and it is becoming one of the most compelling arguments in Bitcoin's environmental defense. Grid operators need what are called interruptible loads, large consumers who can be asked to power down quickly when electricity demand spikes. Bitcoin miners are uniquely suited for this role because shutting down a mining rig costs nothing in terms of data loss or operational disruption. During the Texas winter storm of 2021, major mining operations voluntarily curtailed their power usage and redirected electricity back to residential customers. That is not a talking point. That is documented, on-record behavior. But we cannot let the optimistic case run away with this conversation, because the carbon emissions problem is real and it is serious. Even if 30 to 50% of Bitcoin mining runs on renewables, that still leaves an enormous share powered by fossil fuels, particularly natural gas and coal. The Cambridge Center estimates that Bitcoin's carbon footprint sits somewhere between 40 and 80 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. For context, that is roughly equivalent to the annual emissions of the Czech Republic or Greece. Not the entire United States, but not nothing either. And there is a deeper structural problem. Bitcoin's proof-of-work mechanism means that as the price rises, mining profitability rises, which attracts more miners, which increases energy consumption. There is no natural ceiling built into the protocol itself. Unless the energy mix shifts dramatically toward renewables, a sustained bull market in Bitcoin translates directly into more carbon emissions. That feedback loop is a genuine concern for anyone thinking about the long-term environmental trajectory. This is why Ethereum's 2022 transition from proof-of-work to proof-of-stake was such a seismic event. The merge, as it was called, reduced Ethereum's energy consumption by approximately 99.9% overnight. Bitcoin maximalists argue that proof-of-stake sacrifices security and decentralization, and that debate is legitimate and ongoing. But the environmental proof of concept is undeniable. A blockchain does not inherently have to consume enormous amounts of energy. Bitcoin's consumption is a design choice, and that choice has consequences. There are also emerging alternatives being explored within and around the Bitcoin ecosystem. Some miners are now co-locating with methane capture operations at landfills and oil wells, converting waste gas that would otherwise be flared into the atmosphere into electricity for mining. Flaring methane releases carbon dioxide, but burning it for power at least offsets some fossil fuel consumption elsewhere. Crusoe Energy is one of the most prominent companies doing this at scale, and while it does not solve the overall energy problem, it represents a genuine attempt to reduce net emissions from an otherwise polluting process. The geographic distribution of mining matters enormously too. After China's ban in 2021, a significant portion of mining migrated to the United States, Kazakhstan, and Russia. Kazakhstan, heavily reliant on coal power, briefly became the second largest mining nation on Earth. That shift was genuinely bad for Bitcoin's carbon footprint. The United States has a more mixed grid, with natural gas, nuclear, and growing renewables, which places American mining somewhere in the middle of the emissions spectrum. Where miners operate is not a trivial question. So what do we actually take away from all of this? The environmental impact of Bitcoin mining is real, measurable, and worth taking seriously. Carbon emissions in the range of 40 to 80 million tons annually are not a rounding error. The country-level electricity comparisons are legitimate and they matter. The proof-of-work mechanism creates structural pressure toward higher energy consumption as Bitcoin's value grows. At the same time, the picture is far more nuanced than the worst headlines suggest. A significant portion of mining runs on renewable or stranded energy that would otherwise be wasted. Miners increasingly play a useful role in grid stabilization. Methane capture operations are genuinely reducing net emissions in some cases. And the industry is not static. Efficiency improvements in ASIC hardware continue to reduce energy consumption per computation, even as total hash rate grows. The honest conclusion is that Bitcoin's environmental future depends almost entirely on two things: the direction of the global energy grid, and whether the mining industry continues to move aggressively toward renewables or gets complacent. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to BlockVault Daily for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.